You've got to take the time to type all that out. And that's as important as getting the information out there as opposed to getting it to as many people as possible first. And that's just one example. Just one example of how government regulating stuff is completely screwed up. Completely screwed up. Look at Obamacare. Look at the giant disaster that's become. Well, when you get government involved in mitigating a 1% risk, you are looking at wrecking driving. You are looking at wrecking school. I mean, look at schools. They're wrecked too. And these people are encouraging it over a 1% chance they may catch the measles. Excuse me, your sniffles are not my concern. Keep your gun out of my head.
Hi, this is John Bolton, and you're listening to Vigilant Liberty Radio.
All right, we are back. John Bolton there in that break, president of Red Eye, if you all know him from the Fox News Network, with Greg Gutfeld, Way Too Late at Night. Good stuff. I actually haven't seen that show in a very long time. Probably something I should rectify. Oh, wait. I'm good. People gotta work, you know? People gotta work. Ain't nobody got time for that. So something else I want to kind of get into here is some of the comments that have been made on vaccines from the 2016 potentials, and this is something that I feel like a lot of people have been catching flack for, or they've been, crucified or championed or just left out entirely from the narrative. And that is, let's start off here, Chris Christie. They're saying, he unwittingly ignited a firestorm when he talked about vaccination. Christie didn't start the vaccination thing. Let's be serious, okay? That's undue credit to Christie, all right? People are dumb. Whoever wrote that headline's dumb. I didn't tell you who wrote it. It was a person from Politico, but c'est la vie. So, Christie was responding to vaccine questions because of the measles outbreak. Because of the measles. That's why we're talking about it, not because Christie brought it up. He responded to questions about forced vaccination of children in New Jersey by suggesting that the law in the U.S. needs to balance the right of parents against the government's duty to maintain standards of public health. So, here's the thing. Christie was on the mark, even if all he was trying to do was not take a position. I mean, the position's obvious. Yes, get vaccinated unless you got a really good reason not to. But in the end, it's a choice matter, not a government mandate, not a requirement, blah, blah, blah. Rand Paul said as much. He's a doctor. But what would he know? He's not a virologist, if you want to be that snooty. But I think it's important to note, with Christie and Rand Paul jumping into this, they both, all of these people have done a good job in terms of moderating this. And have come out and kind of shown, they've kind of pointed out some of the hypocrisy in the way it's enforced and stuff like that. And I think the best article that I've seen, the best argument that's come out in terms of vaccination freedom, not anti-vaccine, but vaccination freedom, is to say that vaccines are a health treatment. They are a treatment decision. And that decision could result in death. Vaccines carry a chance of severe illness and death. That's a fact. That's not up for debate. And it's not one of these autism arguments. they do carry a risk of death. They do carry a risk of catching said illness. It's happened. It's a small risk, very small. I still support vaccination, but the fact of the matter is, government cannot force you to inject something that is guaranteed to kill a portion of the population, even if it is 1%. Forcing someone to get that 1% fatality rate, forcing someone to inject it when there's a guaranteed 1% death rate. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, I know we made a lot of arguments earlier about 1% chance of getting the measles. It's 0.3% chance catching the measles worldwide, and a 1% chance, 1 to 3% chance of dying from the measles. So if we're being super duper generous, it's 1/100th. It's way low. But in terms of whether or not you choose to expose yourself to that danger, you can make choices to mitigate even that 1% chance of catching the measles. You can choose not to go to densely populated areas. You can choose to homeschool. You can choose private school that requires vaccination. You can choose daycares that require vaccination. You could choose a workplace that requires vaccination. You can complain to HR and ask that vaccination be required. These are very, very easy steps that you can take yourself to mitigate the risk of vaccination, of catching an illness that can be prevented or at least mitigated by a vaccine. Very, very simple. Very easy. But what you can't do is require the government or ask the government to force something into someone's body that has a chance of killing them. You cannot ask the government to force people to play Russian roulette. Granted, the danger is minimal, but your risk in terms of getting the measles is part of your choice. You choose to go out in public. You choose to work that job instead of working at home. And it may not sound like a choice because you got bills to pay and you can only work that job, and that's fine. But the fact of the matter is nobody's forcing you to work there. Nobody's putting a gun to your head. Nobody's doing that. You could just as easily join the military. You could just as easily go find a job somewhere else. You could just as easily go flip burgers, interact with 3 people. There's other things you can do in terms of ability. Desire, or what's optimal, those are different. But the fact is, you don't have to leave your house if you don't want to. Could result in serious consequences, but if it's that important to you that you have 0 chance of catching the measles, then that's what it involves. So anyways, we've got these candidates weighing in. Rand Paul jumped in and defended Christie. However, in New Jersey, vaccines are required. Absolutely required. The only way that they don't get vaccinated is if a physician certifies the child will get more sick if they get the vaccine. Or religious objection. But those are narrow reasons in New Jersey. If you don't vaccinate your children, you risk losing custody of them. So CPS can step in and take your kids because you didn't vaccinate. So, again, I am 100% in support of vaccines. Get your freaking kids vaccinated. Absolutely. But when it comes to government forcing it, fining and taking kids away from people, it's incredibly stupid. Incredibly, incredibly stupid. So Rand Paul, says the issue is not science. In a free society, we are free to reject scientific orthodoxy and seek unorthodox scientific cures. Of course, we do that at our own peril if our rejection of truth and selection of alternative results in harm to others. So, the issue, according to Paul, and this is from a Daily Beast article, who owns your body? This is a question the government does not want to answer truthfully, because if it does, it will sound like George Orwell in the novel 1984. It would sound like Big Brother in George Orwell's 1984 novel. And that's because government does act like it owns your body. So, despite the fact that you retain rights inherent to your birth, the government acts like you own your body. And deciding whether or not you're going to ingest a medicine, whether or not you're going to inject yourself with a vaccine, that still remains your right. Because you do own your body, no matter what the government says or tries to do. You own you. Now, there are some arguments that people make that, well, kids are technically property until they reach the age of 18, blah, blah, blah. But I think it is absolutely crazy that we're even having this discussion. A tiny fraction, a tiny, teeny, weeny fraction of people are not getting vaccinated. And a tiny, tiny fraction of people have a chance of catching the measles. Just 1% of us will catch the measles. 1 to 3%. Big whoop. Get a booster shot. But we're arguing about this small number of people, this small risk. And you've got people like Hillary Clinton coming out and saying, because the earth is round and the sky is blue and science is right, all kids should be vaccinated. And she's not incorrect. However, it's not far-fetched to say that she would be on board with government requiring vaccinations. Ironically, though, and I say this because it is very, very pleasing to make this argument. Many people that are pro-forced vaccination, many of them, they are pro-abortion. They are pro-choice, right? What comes to mind when you think of my body, my choice? Abortion arguments. It's the clear-cut, my body, my choice, body autonomy. Don't let politicians in Washington tell women what to do with their bodies. The chief Supreme Court case defending the right to choose not to vaccinate your kids or yourself is Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade defines the right to bear and raise children as fundamental and thus personal to parents, and helps keep raising children, helps keep parents largely immune from state interference when it comes to raising their kids. So I find it really, really interesting that a lot of these big government folks, these progressives, are coming out saying, oh, hey, we kind of want to require these vaccines. Because if they do make that argument, and many of them have, I had this argument this week with somebody, to make this argument makes them a massive, massive hypocrite. Because they are saying that you lose the right to your bodily autonomy if they are scared of the measles, if they are scared of an outbreak, whether or not the science backs that up, despite the protections of Roe v. Wade. So, look at it how you will, but that is my favorite takedown of the forced vaccination argument, is the fact that Roe v. Wade spells it right out for you. Absolutely spells it right out. I mean, 42 years ago, it was put into place and ruled, and reinforced, rather, that your body's yours, and that your choices as a parent are yours, and helps protect you from the government. So, regardless of how you feel about Roe v. Wade in terms of life and stuff like that, this is one of those things that is spectacular, that is just, anytime you can throw an argument back like that, it's almost like a juicy steak. You're just like, oh, so good. But as long as we're talking about Rand Paul and Chris Christie and Hillary Clinton, I want to talk a little bit about Scott Walker. Governor Walker. He is a very interesting guy. He's kind of got on my radar here recently.